You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Well, Torgo, in or out?
Patient, dear.
Very well. The master will be very disturbed. I'll get the luggage.
Torgo, we'll stay tonight, and then tomorrow...
You cannot stay. The master would not approve.
See, you're feeling better already. Look at this.
Mike, I'm...
He was, and he knew from the start, he let everybody know that he knew he wasn't making a good movie, but he had intended to make the best movie he could, and Hal had big ideas, and Manos was not the end game for him. Manos was just the beginning, and he had really, truly thought that with his connection with Sterling Siliphant and the bet that he had made to get this movie made and the connections that he had in Hollywood, he thought that he was going to, with this film, open the film industry to El Paso, and then he would be known for that.
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Dave Ballas Podcast. As you can tell by the bumper, this week we're talking about one of the best, worst movies of all time, Manos, The Hands of Fate. Now the reason is, Jackey Neyman, who is this week's guest, actually started the movie as Debbie, who was the daughter of the couple who actually, visited the master in Torgo at that hotel, wherever the hell it was. I remember the first time I actually saw Manos, it was on MST3K, and a time after that, I actually played a prank on a friend of mine who doesn't know a lot about movies. I told him that there was this awesome horror movie, we had to check it out, and as I put it on, again, this is the non-MST3K version, he just ran through a gamut of emotions of confusion and laughter. And about midway through the movie, he was like, what in the hell are we watching? And then finally, I told him the truth. I kind of like to do that to unsuspecting people sometimes, is to put on some really bad movies just to see how they react to it. Everyone, I also want to mention, please, as always, I invite you to share these podcast episodes. As we're approaching episode 100, this podcast has been gaining more and more steam, which is a good thing. Even a retweet or a favorite helps us out a lot. And for those of you who know me, I use Twitter mainly to spread the word of this podcast, but I'm going to start using Facebook more also. So even a share on Facebook, even a like, even a comment can actually go a very long way because it all just ends up helping the podcast out. Speaking of podcast episodes, coming up on the podcast next week is Ryan O'Leary. After him, episode 98 will be with Jason Kartalian. And then episode 99 will be producer Mark Bienstock. He produced M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit and a slew of other movies. And I actually was Mark's TA this past fall semester, that's fall 2015, at Drexel University, where Mark actually taught a film production course. So we'll probably, obviously talk about that. So here we go. Episode 96 with guest Jackey Neyman.
listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Joining me today is Jackey Neyman. Jackey is an actress and producer known for Manos, the Hands of Fate, Manos, the Rise of Torgo, the upcoming Manos Returns, which is currently on Kickstarter, and also the upcoming book, Growing Up with Manos, the Hands of Fate. Jackey, how are you?
I'm great, Dave. Nice to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for coming by. Normally the first question I ask anybody is, how did you get into the film business? But for you, Jackey, I actually already know the answer to that. Okay. But for those of you who aren't listening, Jackey was in Manos, the Hands of Fate. But you know what, Jackey, if you could you just please take us through, how you got into Manos and, and sort of how your career progressed from there?
Sure. Well, I was a child. I was 6 years old, turning 7 when Manos was filmed, and my dad was in community theater, and Hal Warren, who created Manos, approached my dad, and they needed a little girl, and so it was quite convenient for the main actor, the star, the guy who was also doing all the sets, props, and costumes for Manos to also provide the child and the Doberman and the car and a lot of our furniture too. But I got into it because my dad came home one day and he said, "Honey, I'm doing a movie and they need a little girl. Would you like to be that little girl?" And I was very young and shy, and I was kind of terrified at that thought. But then the next thing he said was, "Well, it's okay, honey. If you don't, we'll just get another little girl." Well, that's not going to fly. So of course I had to do it.
So, when you were filming Manos, obviously you were a child. Did you have any fun experiences while filming that, or anything that was just so out of the ordinary? Or because I imagine you this was your first acting role, right? At that point. So I'm sure this was an entirely new world for you, even at that young age.
Well, it was and it wasn't, because my dad had been in theater, community theater, since I was a baby, and so I was very used to him playing different characters, and I was already very familiar with the theater and backstage, and I loved it all. And this was a very different experience, but it was particularly a focus for me that I was the only child on the set. And so, for instance, when the Manic Manor women there, the wives were there, they're all like 18 to 20 years old. So to them, I was kind of fun, a little girl. It's like a living doll to have around. So they kind of fussed over me. And then I remember being well aware that things that were being filmed were the only things being seen by the audience. And so I felt very privileged to know what was going on behind the scenes. That I knew that we kept all the costumes in the closet in the bedroom, and that there was a little 1940s or 50s round refrigerator in the kitchen where we kept all our bag lunches, because we didn't have craft services. And things like that. It was very cool for me to be able to be there all night, and because most of the filming was at night or on weekends, and so it was all on at night and on weekends. So it was just really, really great to be just there. I was a kid that could entertain myself quite well, and so the downtimes I wasn't in the way. I just really enjoyed being there and observing. I just soaked it all up. It was very, very special to me because I adored my dad, and I had this opportunity to be part of something that he was doing. It was remarkable to me.
Now, when you look back on that, Mystery Science Theater really took Manos, and they, showed it on their show and everything. And from what I gather, that's where it started to really get, sort of re-released back into the zeitgeist, because now it became this cult hit again because of MST3K. So, is your dad in Manos Returns?
Yes, he just turned 80 years old in November. And, we had started to do a sequel in 2010 or be part of somebody else's sequel that just never happened. But my dad's scenes in that one did get filmed. And so that's always bothered me so much that my dad was never going to get to see himself in something better on film, because when he was in theater in the 60s and 70s, none of that was recorded. People didn't have video recorders and cameras and all that stuff. So he never got to see himself. So having this opportunity for him was really amazing. And it had to happen now because of his age. And so when he agreed to do this, it just all came together amazingly. The people, all the resources we needed. So initially we did a t-shirt campaign. That was kind of a twofold thing. One, to get my dad some money for doing this and to get his scene filmed right away while he was strong and healthy. We didn't want to take any chances. And just for him to have this opportunity again. So for him to get paid and for us to get this done. So we did a t-shirt campaign and raised in profit over $1,000, and that's what we gave him. And we set it up and we filmed his scenes. So that's done. We're very, very happy about that. That was critical. If we're going to say the master's going to be in it, he better be in it.
I saw your banners on Facebook, and I was like, wow. I said, wait a minute. I said, I think her dad's still in this, and I looked it up, and I just wanted to make sure before I asked, but
yeah, that's him.
Yeah, I saw it, and I was like, wow. I said, that's great. Now you have 2 returning cast members. Originally, with Manos, the Hands of Fate, from the one from 1966, I heard that Hal Warren was a manure salesman who wrote this script in his downtime. I don't know if that's true or not, Jackey, but maybe you could comment, because I know sometimes there's like, urban legends and stuff that form around movies. Mm-hmm. But was he really a manure salesman?
At one point, when he was still in Houston, he did have a job selling chemical fertilizer. So in a sense, yes, but not really. And in fact, and we'll get to this about my book, but there's a whole chapter on Hal Warren, and I did a tremendous amount of research. I talked to his family members, and I found out a whole lot about Hal, and from how he got into theater and how he got to that place, and he did a lot of writing. He wrote a musical, he wrote plays, he wrote books. He has one book that's published about salesmanship, because he was the eternal salesman, and so he wrote a book about it. But yeah, he was. There's a lot of urban legends about Manos, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, and that's one of the reasons I became so visible in the first place. Was that's how it started, was me just trying to straighten a few things out online with people on chat rooms. That's how it all started for me.
When you were done filming the movie and the movie was edited and you had that first showing, what did you think at that time when you saw the movie?
Wow. Well, at this point, yeah, the premiere, I have a whole chapter on that too. It was worthy of a chapter. But the premiere was, Hal had so much pageantry around this thing. He really knew how to do it. So he had lights that he borrowed from a car dealership sweeping the sky in front of the theater. He had a red carpet. He had a limousine, and I'll say a limousine, and all the cast and crew showed up, and we were on the other side of the block, and the limousine would come around, pick up a few of us, drop us off in front of the theater, and there were so many people there. All the officials from El Paso was there. We had autograph hounds that Hal had hired. which actually were the street kids, because we lived on the border of Mexico, and most of them didn't speak any English, but they were still getting our autographs as we stepped from the limo. So we go into the theater, and the community, the theater and creative community in El Paso, probably still now today, but at that time was quite tight knit. And so there was a lot of friends and well-wishers. And so we get in there and sit down. My dad wanted to make sure we had a good view. And so we sat about fifth row center, which meant there was no escape. And then the lights go down, and the music, it starts, and there's a couple of shorts before the film, like a nature short, and then the movie starts, and then there's this long driving scene, and it just wow, people got it pretty much right away, and there was some snickers and little whisperings at first, and my dad and sinking lower in his seat. And then, but for me, all I cared about was me. I'm a kid. I just want to see myself up there. And so the car drives up, and my mouth opens, and this whatever comes out of my mouth. And I was absolutely horrified. I was just appalled. I felt my face get hot. And I just burst into tears, and I just sat through the whole thing in misery, just crying.
See, I was going to ask, because I imagine as a kid, part of me thought that you would just be so excited that you wouldn't see, you would just see all the positives, if you know what I mean? Like, you would just be so enthralled by this entire experience. But that was very interesting. I honestly, Jackie, I swear I didn't think you were going to say that. I thought you were going to tell me that you were just like, like later on, your dad had a talk with you, like, about the movie, being like, a lot of these movies, like, something like The Room, the reason I like Manos, I like The Room, I like Miami Connection, is, I understand they're not, some people say, best of the worst or whatever you want to call it. But what I think is, I see a lot of passion in these movies, and I get that. Like, I see a lot of, they actually have heart to them. And I know some people are going to look at me kind of, cockeye when I say that, but there is, there's a pride when they're making this film, if you know what I mean. And I'm sure Hal, when he was making, Manos, you could see that he actually was trying to make, his own version of a horror film.
He was, and he knew from the start, he let everybody know that he knew he wasn't making a good movie, but he had intended to make the best movie he could, and Hal had big ideas, and Manos was not the end game for him. Manos was just the beginning, and he had really truly thought that with his connection with Sterling Siliphant and the bet that he had made to get this movie made, and the connections that he had in Hollywood, he thought that he was going to, with this film, open the film industry to El Paso, and then he would be known for that. And unfortunately, that actually, well, in a really weird sense, it kind of did happen. But
you're right. I mean, because right now, I've actually had filmmakers from Texas on here. Granted that most of them live in Austin, but there are some from I know some from Dallas and some from all over Texas. So, and the film industry now has just grown so much that
Texas.
yeah, Texas is huge. I mean, now it seems to be like the southwest in America, because Georgia, Louisiana, some parts, I think South Carolina might still be up there. I can't remember, but just these areas now that have exploded in filmmaking.
Yeah, and he was right about the wild desert beauty, the sunshine 300 days a year. There's wide open spaces. There's it's a beautiful area. It's desert, but it's beautiful. And, it is a good place to film.
Yeah, definitely. One movie that I really noticed, that desert location, that I really noticed how cinematic it can be, was in the movie No Country for Old Men.
Oh, yeah. That could not have been filmed anywhere else. It wouldn't have worked the way it worked.
Yeah, especially on that whole Mexican-Texas border, that whole firefight. And then when, Llewellyn Moss just running away, I mean, I was like, wow. I was like, I've seen a ton of Westerns too, but I've never actually put it together that much. I've noticed that, usually you see like, a mountain formation, but then I noticed an old country. I'm like, wow, this is some really beautiful scenery.
Yeah. And then you get the sense of the culture too.
Yes,
with it.
Definitely.
And that's really cool because it is so different than other places in the country.
Yeah, very true. Jack, I wanted to ask you one question too, was after Manos came out, were you recognized at all or did you start, continue acting after that?
Well, nobody was recognized. I mean, nobody ever wanted to talk about it. As soon as Manos was over, it literally everybody went their own ways and tried really hard to pretend it never happened. But I definitely was bit by the acting bug, mostly because of my dad being in the theater. And I remember telling my friends at school that I'd been in a movie, but, they didn't care at that time when I was young. And then, when I got into high school, I continued. I went to acting classes, and I actually did do one other play with my dad in 1971. He played, what's his name, Lowther in The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, and in El Paso. And the director of that had somehow got Julie Adams, the actress Julie Adams, to come out as a special celebrity to play Jean Brodie. And I got to be one of the schoolgirls. What's really cool about that is I went to the Living Dead convention in Portland a few months ago because I heard Julie Adams was there. And I still had the program from 1971 from the play with my dad's name in it and her name and my name. And I approached her and I asked her to sign it. Not only did she sign it, but I bought her book and that play was mentioned in her book. She even talked about it. So I'm like, wow, we're in each other's books, Very cool.
Yeah, it's a small world, right?
But then I went on and my dad moved to Southern California when my parents divorced when I was a young teen, and I went with him. So I continued acting through high school. And then I made a decision at that point that as a creative person that I had to live creatively, but that I felt I had more opportunity in art than in acting. And so I just kind of switched. I mean, I always had that love of acting and that love of theater. And, but I became an artist and I had a pretty good career, but then it comes full circle and this whole Manos thing comes up. And honestly, because of Manos and my place in it and history and the way that I engage with people has come to this place to give me opportunities to realize pretty much every dream I ever wanted. It's like I get to taste a little bit of everything. So it's pretty incredible, really.
And I noticed on your website, you have some of your artwork up on your website, correct?
Yeah, I believe I do. I need to update that because I'm an artist. And so some of those organizational things, especially lately with all the Manos stuff building up, sometimes it's hard to find time to promote my art. I mean, I'm sitting here in my studio looking at walls of it that nobody's seen because I can't seem to get it photographed and posted,
Well, like we were talking about before, this episode started, the internet now, has made everything so easy. But, now, like, we were talking about crowdfunding, for instance, that whole thing, started. And, even before, but, as soon as it starts, people were like, what is crowdfunding? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but now, with art, and I actually am friends with I guess she's kind of like an art dealer, I guess you could call her. Uh-huh. What she does now is she actually takes photos and she actually just like will put them up on her, like her Instagram, or she'll post them on like her Facebook or whatever. And then, I mean, they're not, professionally done photos, obviously they're just done with their phone, but it's just, stuff that, she finds interesting.
Yeah. Well, I find when I do post my things regularly, I mean, I get people to, I sell art. But if
Yeah.
I don't put it out there, obviously I'm not going to sell anything. So it's hard. I mean, the internet is amazing. I just can't imagine how to do any of this. I don't know how any of us did anything before. I just can hardly remember. But on the other hand, there's so many different things. You think you got something down. I'm just getting Twitter down, and somebody says, well, now you need to do Instagram. And have you done LinkedIn? I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up.
What I find with social media is it's like people migrate, almost like people migrate from different countries. They, first it was Facebook was the big one, and then people sort of got tired of that. They went to Twitter. And Twitter is now falling off, and people are going to Instagram and Snapchat, and but I mean Facebook's still number one. But now it's the a lot of the teenagers and stuff have fallen off, and they use Snapchat now. That's where I draw the line, because I absolutely hate Snapchat. I tried it one time, and I was like, I'm just going to stick to Twitter and Instagram, because I hate Facebook too, but no, I completely understand where you're coming from. It just seems like social media is just ever changing, and now Twitter's is going through some inner turmoil, and they're trying out new features, and I hear now they might get rid of the 140 characters and make it like So I mean, it's just one of those things. It's always changing, and that's why I think it's a good idea to always have your own website. That way you can drive people back to that. And that's not going to change, because unless you change it, it's not going to change.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it is there. But yeah, I need to update it. That's for sure. And anyway, while we're at that, it's debbiesmanos.com.
And I'll make sure to link to that in the show notes, everybody. You can, and I'll also make sure to post some of your art, Jackey.
Oh, thank you. I'll send some to you too. Yeah, I'm really liking my new stuff.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I will hang it on the wall, because I actually have just been cleaning up my office here, and I actually have like room now, because I had so much stuff on my walls that I was like, why is this still up here? It's like a poster of a movie I mean I personally did years ago, and I was like, this never came of anything. So I just put it in the closet now. Yeah. So you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, because you get so used to things. You got to switch things up. I did interior faux finish. I worked for high-end clients and color consultation, and worked with people in their homes and businesses for like 25 something years, and so that's something that was so amazing to people is we'd do a wall, and then I'd rearrange their art, and suddenly they'd see this painting in a whole new way. Or we might just move something, get rid of it, and put something else up, and it's like, wow, the whole environment changes with one little shift, sometimes. But yeah, you gotta keep things fresh, because my philosophy in life is the little things are microcosms of how you want the whole big thing to work, and so I try to live that way. When my desk is disorganized, it's just a reflection of my mind.
Yeah, that is a good that is a good analogy, and like for me, when I switched my desk up, and now like my room feels like twice as big. I literally used to do the podcast on the opposite side of the room, and I bought a new smaller desk. And switch that desk over to the other side, and now it feels like a much bigger office, and it's just a small change. Obviously the office didn't get bigger, but
no, feng shui.
Exactly. People thought they were tuning in to hear about Manos, and they're hearing about feng shui.
Yeah, well, that's the first time I've discussed that on a podcast.
See, I always try to get something new from my guests, because sometimes they're asked the same questions over and over again.
I'll tell you, lately it's crazy. Because of this thing, it's just kind of exploding, and I've had to be a lot better organized to keep track of who I'm talking to on what day, and so that I can go back and listen or read, and it's wow. This whole organization thing it's a whole different thing for me.
Yeah. Well, one of the tips that I usually give to people crowdfunding is there has to be sort of like the crowdfunding czar or crowdfunding, whatever you want to call that person's title. But basically, they're in charge of the campaign,
Yeah.
but they also like help to organize, like, okay, I have this actress, she's available for podcasts or whatever. I have, this person's available, and that person sort of facilitates that as well. And that is one duty that, that person has to be so well organized and, constantly sending calendar invites and stuff like that. But if you could get somebody like that, I mean, they're worth their weight in gold.
Well, luckily we do. We have, we're a team here. This doing this Kickstarter thing has pretty much been a full-time job for me the last week and a half or so, but I absolutely couldn't do this alone. There's no way. But Rachel Jackson, who created Manos Hands of Felt, is running the Kickstarter. She organized it, and she's been working with Tanya Atomic, our director, and I. The three of us have just been in constant contact. And but boy, Rachel is amazing. She's gotten the press releases out there. And my job here is to keep myself organized, and that's a full-time job, But wow, Rachel is amazing. And the three of us, plus then we have Joe Sherlock, who is our director of photography for the film, and he's Skullface Astronaut. He's done, I don't know how many films on his own, but he's doing all our graphics for the Kickstarter. And then Steve Foley, who is our editor and scriptwriter, is doing all those, the videos. He's edited the videos that we're doing. And, I just can't believe what an incredible team I have. It's so synergetic. Is that a word? I mean, our synergy is amazing. It's, this whole Manos thing is amazing. It just draws the right people together. And same thing happened with my book and my co-author. I don't know how this happens. I understand how religions are formed, because the will of Manos is, I say, put your hands in the air, Put your Manos in the air for Manos.
I do want to touch upon that. Your Kickstarter right now for Manos, it's currently crowdfunding. Do you know the exact date that's going to end, Jackey?
March 2nd.
Okay, so everyone listening to this, March 2nd, 2016 is the last day to contribute. I've contributed because I saw the project and I actually almost, clicked off of it, but I started to read and I saw, the girl who was in Manos, the original, was in this. I said, okay, so there's some returning cast members. Mm-hmm. And then I started reading more about it. I was like, this sounds pretty cool. Because at first, Jackey, I was wondering, I thought, I hope some, random filmmaker's not trying to cash in on Manos. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. They do that all the time to Night of the Living Dead. I mean, I have seen so many Night of the Living Dead, quote unquote, sequels mm-hmm. that have nothing to do with George Romero or Russ Steiner or John A. Russo, and it's unbelievable. So like when I saw you were behind Manos Returns, I was like, okay, this is something I want to actually contribute. And now that you're actually crowdfunding it, what were some of the things that you wanted to accomplish with Manos Returns? Because it actually is a sequel to Manos, obviously, mm-hmm. and so what are some of the things that you wanted to accomplish with this film?
Well, first of all, I want to say that, it's a sequel, but it's very different. We get a lot of questions like, well, how are you going to keep with Manos stylistically? Are you going to use the same cameras and different things like that? And it's not a remake. It's kind of a continuation, but it's not. It's its own story, and we're going in a whole different direction because Manos just can't be recreated. And you touched on that earlier about, you didn't use the word, but like that earnest intent, that mm-hmm. somebody like Hal comes at, but without experience, and then, by some magical concoction, they come up with this crazy thing that hits with the public somehow, 27 years later. But it's just, we're making a film that is a nod to Manos. We're bringing in my dad and myself, and we're also hoping to have Diane Marie, who played my mother. She's still just beautiful, amazing. She went on to this amazing career as a top model in Europe, by the way. She's still beautiful. So we're hoping to have her back. And then we're pretty much it for who's still living. And for the sheriff, we're actually using the son of William Bryan Jennings, the original sheriff. His son will be playing our sheriff. And he looks a lot like his dad, so that's pretty exciting. So what we're accomplishing here is we're giving the originals an opportunity to kind of bask in the Manos love, because like you said, there's so many other projects, and Manos has a great number of projects. I personally celebrate them all. I encourage people. I love that Manos has inspired so much talent, and I've met the most amazing people through this whole thing. I've got a Facebook friend in New Orleans that is working on a Manos burlesque show that I hope to be able to go see. So, and then Manos Hands of Felt, there's a stage production. So I think it's all really wonderful. But at the same time, the original people who were involved have never benefited from any of these wonderful things, or MST or anything, other than a little notoriety. So this project gives us a chance to, just to come out and bask a little in that love and hopefully benefit financially. So one way or the other, we've already given my dad some money for doing his part. We want to pay everybody who's involved in this film, because when you do a creative project like this, so many people volunteer so much time and effort, and we'd like to reward them somehow a little bit. And we also want to make the best film that we can make. And so with our base goal of 24,000, we can make a film. And the people that are on this film have so much experience with no budget and low budget, and have won awards and done wonderful things with that. I'm so excited to see what we can actually do with a budget. And then as the budget goes up, as we go above our $24,000, which I hope we can do, is then we're just going to make a better movie. We'll have more budget for costuming. We'll have more budget to bring in more people. And going back a little, another original is Nikki Mathis, who sang Forgetting You on the original soundtrack. I found her when I was researching my book, and she still sings. She's amazing. She's a jazz singer, and she's been singing on stage since like 1959. She was on stage with Dave Brubeck 7 years before Manos ever happened. So she's going to re-record Forgetting You for us. That's one of the perks.
So when you actually contacted her, what did she think about that? Because the reason I asked that is they just released a sequel to Samurai Cop it was Samurai Cop 2, and the filmmakers wanted to get everybody back from the original, and when they called people, they thought it was a joke. Because I don't know if I'm sorry, Jackie, I'm kind of like a movie buff, so if I'm throwing movies,
I know, yeah.
Okay, good. You know what Samurai Cop? Okay, so Samurai Cop 2, then when they were calling people, they actually were like, "Is this a joke? Why would they make a sequel to this all these years later?" So so what was the reaction when you contacted? I'm sorry, what was her name?
Nikki.
So what was the reaction when you contacted Nikki?
Well, I initially contacted her for my book when I was researching my book, and I just could not believe that I mean, it was a long, circuitous journey to find her. It was not direct because she was none of the musicians were ever credited. So I actually found out who all the musicians were, and I've talked to her and the guitarist, Kurt Warren. So no relation to Hal, by the way. But so she was actually, oh, she's so gracious and kind, and what a wonderful lady. We had the best phone conversation, and she was very happy to interview for my book, and so we became friends. And it was actually probably we'd been friends for a year before I asked her if she would be willing to re-record Forgetting You. And she did agree, and I'm making it very easy for her. That's the other thing, is that I've already contacted a recording studio near her home, and we have somebody else who's doing our soundtrack or creating the music. So we're putting it all together. And that's the other thing that we can do based on the internet, is we can work with people all over the country and pull this together. You know, we don't all have to be in the same place to do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, very true. And then you sort of, like you were just touching upon, you sort of wonder, how did we do this before the internet?
Oh, we could not have done this. I mean, on another back to the book again, was the cover of my book. The artwork is amazing, and it was created by an artist friend in Croatia. How would I ever know anybody from Croatia if it weren't for social networking? Well, I can tell you I wouldn't, because I don't know anybody in Croatia.
I did actually want to talk about the book, growing up with Manos, what was the impetus to actually, write this book?
Well, back when MST3K first aired Manos, and my dad and it just disappeared. I thought I'd never see it again after 1966, even though I looked and looked. And then there it was on television. And then it had this popularity, and people kept talking about it here and there, and I'd chime in, and my goal was just to kind of straighten out some of the Manos mythology out there. And that was my quest, and that's where it started. And then I think it was 2012, or actually since 2010, I started thinking about writing a book. I thought, well, I have a lot of memories. I have a lot of stories, and my dad's still here, and I should interview him. And I just couldn't figure out how to pull it together. And then I think it was 2012, the whole blogging thing got big. And I thought, well, maybe I'll write a blog and start writing some of these things down so I can preserve them on paper, so to speak. And also to see if anybody's actually interested. Well, as I started writing the blog, I started noticing readers all over the world. I mean, for a couple months, most of my readers were actually for 2 months in a row. I had more readers in Latvia than anywhere else, including the United States. So I don't get what that's about. But then I started noticing the numbers were building, and I was getting, about 3,000 or so views a month on my blog, and a lot of really great comments. So I kind of put the feelers out there, knowing, again, I had never written a book. I had no idea how to go about it or find a publisher. So I met a woman online on social media again, Laura Mazuka Toops, who has 30 years experience in editing, and she's written a couple novels, and she's a Manos fan, and we just hit it off. And she lives in Chicago. So again, we never actually met face to face until, when was it? I think it was October. I flew out there so we could get our final edit done and get it to the publisher. But because the deadline for the publisher was December. And then, so I'm writing this book, and at first I thought it was just going to be kind of memoirs and my dad's memories and whatever else I could find. And it just kept growing. And I started realizing that I'm really good at research, and I really enjoy research. And it was like this game. And then I'd uncover somebody. I actually talked to one of the wives. I found two of them. No, I found three of them, but only one would talk to me. And I even found a relative of John Reynolds who refused to talk, and I respect that because John Reynolds played Torgo and committed suicide. So, I didn't want to stir up or bother the family if they didn't want to talk, But in the process, I found so many people, and I learned so much information and background and people that were never credited. I got the credits straightened out. You wouldn't believe how screwed up the credits are in Manos Hands of Fate. I mean, people were credited for things they didn't do, and some people weren't mentioned at all. So it just turned into this epic journey. Took me 16 months from signing my contract with my co-author to getting it to the publisher. But another crazy thing was when we got to the point to go looking for a publisher, she did her research and she came to me with 3 names of 3 different publishers that she thought would be best for my book. And so I looked at the 3 of them and I picked one that I thought would be the best, Bear Manor Media. They do a lot of biographies and books on film and such like that. So we wrote them a pitch letter, and it was the same day. That was crazy. The same day we get an email back from the publisher saying with capital letter, yes, exclamation point. I would love to see that. I'm a big Manos fan. I know how like, whoa. So we sent him, the requisite outline and chapters. And within 2 days, he was back with a contract. And I'm like, that's insane. Who gets that, on their first book? But he loves it. And then I got this offer from this incredible artist to do the art for my cover. And it just came together. So I just got I got the proof for the whole book just a few days ago. So it's out very, very soon. Like I said, one of the perks in the Kickstarter is a pre-publication signed copy of the manuscript, and I'm working to get those. I mean, the moment this Kickstarter's over, those need to go out so that they actually get them before the book. I think the book's going to be out very soon. It'll be out sometime in March, I believe.
I'll have to make sure to pick up a copy because I was actually going to ask you when the release date is. But, as you're telling the story, it just reminded me of what you said earlier, which is, Manos as a religion. The power of Manos.
It's so bizarre. I mean, I've been living it for years, and I've always approached this thing with not what I can get out of it, because that's just not who I am. I'm a greater good kind of person, and I've talked to other people doing other Manos projects from time to time where they seem kind of like startled, when I approached them, and they're worried. And then once they realize that I'm not out to get anything out of them, I just want to know what's going on. I just love it. I support and celebrate. And then, and then we're all friends. And in fact, some of these projects are promoting our Kickstarter now, and which is remarkable to me because they've got their own things to do. I think that's just great. We're all one big family as far as I'm concerned. But then, there's also a dark side. One of Hal Warren's sons, like you said, Night of the Living Dead. And I mean, I get his position. He's feeling left out. But, man, his approach is so negative. And he just comes at everybody with threats. And so he harassed me for like 3 years, nasty letters and cease and desist, and telling me I can't talk about being Debbie. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, So, I mean, that whole debacle really kind of crushed me for a while. And I just went silent and dark because my whole thing, if it's not fun, it's just not worth doing. This Manos thing is all about fun and having and the love of it, the creativity. And I just don't see room for that negativity, and there's room for everybody here as far as I'm concerned. So we're just putting our, we're putting our hat in the ring.
One thing I've learned too is, somebody doesn't like what you're doing, or maybe thinks that they have a similar idea or something, and they put those the cease and desist orders.
Yeah.
I got one before because some guy thought I made a trailer that we made that I produced. He thought it was too close to his idea, and I actually looked at his idea and I said, dude, these things are so far apart. I said, I don't understand. And I think some people just sort of, like you said, left out, or maybe they feel like threatened in some weird way and they just lash out like that.
Well, I know that I drive him nuts just by doing what I do, but I'm not trying to. It's not about him, it's about me, my life, my dad. And when I was writing my blog stories, I got some comments of him telling me not to talk about this or that, or stop telling those stories, tell my story. And I'm like, write your own blog. I can only tell what I know. And so the book was like that too. I worked very, very hard to get the story right. And if I didn't know it, I didn't write it. And there are things that I learned that I didn't write because I don't want to hurt anybody, But I'm trying to tell the truth as best as I possibly can,
Honestly, I think that's great, Jackie. Honestly, I saw the Manos Returns on Kickstarter. I read the backstory behind it, and I was like, I'm definitely going to donate to this campaign. And again, with your website, you're sharing your artwork and everything else. Jackie, I say keep on going.
Well, I can't stop. It's I mean, really, I'm creative. I'm an artist. I can't tell you how many different businesses I started. Some of them work, some of them don't. And every time I get knocked down, I just kind of shake it off. And I'm like, okay, deep breath, do it again. I don't beat my head against a wall, but I always find a way if it's something that I really want. And I am absolutely determined this is going to happen because, as I said before, my dad is 80. We have filmed his scenes, and that's my motivation here, getting it done, is my dad needs to see this. And we have some very definite dates we're keeping to. This is the 50th anniversary of Manos, The Hands of Fate, this year, from 1966 when it was made and when it premiered. And we're kind of keeping to that. January 30th, we launched our Kickstarter, which was the day that Mystery Science Theater put Manos on television on Comedy Central for the very first time and brought it to the public. And November 15th is the 50th anniversary from when Manos premiered in El Paso in the theater. And we want to do our first screening on that date. So we've got a lot of work to do. But in preparing for this Kickstarter, we want to make sure we can get this movie done and have something that the fans are really going to enjoy. I mean, this is going to be a pretty good movie. We're not making a bad movie. We're making the best movie we can for whatever we end up with, financially. And so I'm very excited about it. This is going to be awesome. And it's going to be fun. It is fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it, Jackie. I think it is going to be very well done. Because like I said, it's the passion to do it, and that's what really, in a lot of movies you can see if the filmmaker had passion doing it, or if they're just going through the motions, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and we're not doing this like, you can see movies. They're made just for the, to try to appeal to the masses and make money. And we're not out to do that. We want to make a fan film. We want to make something that we can be really proud of.
Exactly. And, I can definitely tell that just by talking to you. Jackie, we've been talking for about, 50 minutes now.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to say, in closing, Is there anything sort of that we didn't talk about that you maybe wanted to say, or anything you wanted to maybe just add to sort of put a period at the end of this conversation?
I just want to say that we are only $38 short of getting to 60% of our base funds on the Kickstarter. And that's with 163 backers. That's amazing. I mean, we've got backers all through the whole thing. This is an amazing Kickstarter with so many levels of rewards that appeal to people. And so I just really urge you, even if it's only $5, please donate. Help us get this movie made. And if you can't donate anything, just share it. Let people know, because Manos fans and MST fans are in every walk of life and around every corner. You just got to get the word out there.
Yeah, that is very true. And I heard about Manos through MST3K. And now, obviously years later when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is amazing. And, Jackey, I want to wish you the best of luck, with everything. And, where can people find you out online?
Manos Returns for the Kickstarter. It's manosreturns.com. And for me, everything is under Debbie's Manos. On Facebook, on my website, on my blog, on Blogger, Debbie's Manos, and that's it. If you Google me, I'm right there.
And I will link to all of Jackey's social media accounts in the show notes as well. Again, everyone, you can find that on davebullis.com. Obviously, some of the show notes in Podbean and iTunes and YouTube and everywhere else I put all the show notes. Also have a link to the Kickstarter campaign for Manos Returns in the show notes as well. Everybody, it's davebullis.com. Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. Jackey, I want to say, I want to wish you the best of luck. And again, I want to say thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Dave. Pleasure talking to you.
Oh, pleasure was all mine. And you know what? I want to have you on again when Manos Returns comes out. I want to, that way we can talk about the premiere and everything else.
I would love that. I've got a note of it right here because organization is key.
All right, Jackey, I want to say thanks again and take care.
Thank you, Dave. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.